Shit, boy, RP on the track.
Yo, what going on, big family? It's your Charles Carolina coming to you live and direct once again from Charleston, South Carolina, aka the Holy City, you dig me? And today we're going to discuss the etymology of the Sambo, the Samoa, the Samurai, Uncle Sam, and Shem, you dig? Y'all know we like to deal with words right here in the village, and the reason why we're going to do the word Sam today is because we feel like it's important for us to be able to identify ourselves wherever we were in history or wherever we plan to go into the future. You dig what I'm saying? So the word Sambo, what struck this conversation up with me and some of my people was the word Sambo, right? The word Sambo, noun, and where we at in America represents a so-called mixed person, a mulatto person, a person that has so-called black and so-called white DNA. You dig? In the South, we call them people Sambos that represent mixed people, right? And then we also make the correlation to the word Shem because we know the word Sam itself is Shem. Sam is an English representation of the Hebrew word Shem, right? So if we name somebody Samuel in English, right? The Hebrew counterpart to that would be Shemael. The word Shem or the word Sam, because they're the same word, you dig? Hopefully y'all can understand that. The word Shem and the word Sam both meant name. In the Hebrew language or in the biblical aspect of it, the word Shem or the word Sam means name. And I'll make sure and put all of my references up on the screen. That one of my partners tell me I need to start putting the references, but y'all know I go off the dome, I go off the top of my head, right? So now we can make the correlation that the word Sam means name. Something means name. The word Samuel means the name of God, right? At one point in time in history, the word Sam, the word Shem, represented so-called black people, right? We know today that the word has morphed because that's what etymology represents. We know that the word has morphed to represent mixed breed people or people who have a representation of so-called black blood, right? And we also know that they made that progression kind of early on because the word Shem translates into the word semi or Semitic, right? And we know that semi also means like half or part. You know what I'm saying? It means that you got something that you are a mixed breed person. But at one point, the word Sam represented a so-called black person, right? Then we can go and make this reference to the samurai. I know it's a lot of people now starting to learn about the black samurai Yasuke, right? A lot of people starting to learn about Yasuke, the first so-called black samurai sumo wrestler, wherever y'all got going on, right? Well, when I've been young, we also heard these stories, but we also knew that the first shogun was a so-called black person. I can't remember his name right now, and I'm going to look for the references to put him up on the screen also. But you know that the shogun held the highest power in that land at the time. So if the shogun himself was black, it should not have been an anomaly to have Yasuke, the so-called black samurai. The word samurai has the elements of that word Shem in it also, right? It has the word Sam, and it also has the word Mu, which we know Mu represents the so-called black indigenous people also. Mu was a mythological land, you dig? So now we got the word Sam and we got Mu, right? Sam means name or represents a so-called black person. Mu represents that land, right? And then we got Ra, which is like lightning, you dig? And we know for some reason, well, we know the reason, right, John? We can get into that later, but for some reason, black people, so-called black people, are always represented with lightning powers or represented by electricity. You dig what I'm saying? If you look at I don't know if y'all like comic books and stuff like that, but if you look at these comic characters, they seem to always represent so-called black people with electrical type of powers. You dig? So thus the term samurai in itself at one point represented a so-called black person. When we were young, I don't know how things are now, but when we were young, we were taught that a person couldn't be a samurai unless they had so-called black blood. So Yosuke, the black samurai, should not have been an anomaly, especially when we can show y'all the fact that the first shogun in this area was black. The shogun is the one who hired all of these samurais, right? So if we can prove that, then we can prove that having a so-called black person in that society was not an anomaly. It probably became a rarity after the Mongol tribes from the north, the Scythians and the steppe people, invaded and replaced the so-called black people of those Asian lands. But we know that indigenous Asian is a so-called black person. So black people over there were not an anomaly. It's only an anomaly nowadays, just like in America. Them people have been pushed out and overrun and ran to the outskirts, the edges of their communities, just like in America, just like Egypt and every place else. You think? So keep in your mind that that word samurai in itself has some type of representation with so-called black folk, right? All right, then we can go and like we talked about earlier, we did with these words. We know that the word represents a mixed person right now, right? Well, then let's take a trip a little bit east from Japan and from Asia to Samoa, right? Look at that word Samoa, right? Sam-oa, right? So the word Samoa in itself is very similar to the word Sambo. I know when you look at their etymology of the word Samoa, it translates into the place of Mo, right? I would change that into the name of Mo because we know that Sam means name, right? You dig? We know that when we speak in these languages, we speaking them from when we speak in the names of these places, we speaking them from a European ideal, right? So the word Samoa in itself represents the so-called mixed person, right? We know that Sam used to represent a so-called black person, but today it represents a semi-person. You dig? A person who was half, right? So nowadays, if you look at the people in Samoa, they mostly Polynesian, which I believe that I know the indigenous Polynesians were so-called black people. So they mostly the indigenous Polynesian mixed in with the Western Europeans, right? Because we know the Western Europeans invaded those islands, took over those places. And they also have part of the modern Mongol DNA stock because we know that the Mongols also invaded those islands early on, probably before the Europeans. The Mongols and the Europeans, the same people. You dig? But we're going to have to get into that when we get into the origin of the Caucasian and the Asian. They're the same people. So, you're saying they tactics and their lifestyles and how they handled things were, especially war-wise, were very, very similar. Scythia was on both sides. So that's another thing that we had to show you right quick is that Samoa nowadays represents a mixed breed people because that's a part of the process of us being replaced. But at one point in time, that island was all so-called black people, Samoa, right? You dig? So now let's go ahead and let's do Uncle Sam right quick, right? Because I think I got to read something. Uncle Sam is a derivative of a so-called black person also, right? Because that's psychologically telling you that you from this land, that this land was a black land. When you hear the word Uncle Sam, subliminally, them boy letting you know that this is a so-called black land because the word Sam, as we know, represented a so-called black person, especially at the time when the United States became known as Uncle Sam. So-called black people in the South been known as Sammies or Sambos all up until about World War II, World War I maybe, when the word became derogatory, when they stopped using the term for us. But between 1813 and 1814, the word Sam simply meant uncle in the black community. You dig what I'm saying? So I guess it was like a slang term for us saying uncle. You dig? So the word uncle and Sam are the same word, because then we see the creation of the word Uncle Sam was created. The creation of the nickname Uncle Sam as a representation of the United States came about at the same time that it was documented that this word Sam meant uncle in the so-called black community. So the word uncle and the word Sam at that point in time meant the exact same thing. Now I know it also has the double meaning because the initials in the United States are US, Uncle Sam. But prior to Uncle Sam, they've been calling it brother something. You dig? I can't remember. Like I said, I'll try to put the references up on the screen. But before the United States was known as Uncle Sam, it was known as something else, brother something, right? So now that just, like I said, for me psychologically and, you know what I'm saying, subliminally, is telling us that this place was known as the land of the brothers, the land of the Sams, the land of the Sams, you dig? And that's why it's called Uncle Sam, the etymology of that terminology. I know that might sound a little bit far-fetched, but we deal with words and we deal with how these words progress. Now, nowadays, the point where we at now, since the word became derogatory for so-called black people in the early 1900s, the term was left to represent people with black blood, the mixed breed people. And in the South, they became known as Sambos, right? But prior to civil rights, prior to the mid 1900s, the term didn't necessarily represent a mixed person, it represented a so called black person. And just so y'all know, the word ham and the word shem, the same word also. You dig? Both of them words represent so called black people. The word ham and the word shem is the same word. You dig? I know that sounds a little bit funny too, but go ahead and do your research and dig a little bit deeper. I ain't saying that we right on everything, but we did a lot of research on these subjects. But y'all let me know what y'all feel in the comments down below about the etymology of Sam, Sambo, the samurai. You dig what I'm saying? Make sure you hit the like button and subscribe. Support the Gullah Culture Conservation, unless you dig. Peace out till next time, big homies.